As the old saying goes, there are two certainties in life. Number one, death. And number two, taxes. We can't help you with death, but we've got you covered with taxes. This is Ask the Tax Attorney. As you know, the federal government doesn't play when it comes to owning taxes, but too many people freak out about it. So if you're a business owner and you're in trouble, or you're afraid you might be in trouble with the IRS, this is the show for you. Your host is a tax attorney with over 20 years of experience, and she's helped clients erase over $4 million in tax debt. So let's get to it. This is the Ask the Tax Attorney podcast. And now your host, Claudia Moncars.
So first, I want to welcome all our listeners, and also I want to give a big welcome and thank you to Steven Veinger for joining us in today's podcast episode. And Steven is a specialist in criminal defense here in South Florida. So like I always, the first question, and thank you for coming, Steven. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Claudia.
And like the first question that I always start with, because, I always say, we're lawyers, but I think first and foremost, we're business owners because we're both owners of our own law firm. And I always say that puts that in a unique position to be able to give advice to our listeners who are also business owners, to get them, because we are in their shoes every day. So we understand their everyday questions that they have, because we have them ourselves a lot of the time. So the first question I would start with is, can you tell us about your business journey? How do you end up going from being a lawyer that maybe worked for somebody else to end up being a lawyer that owns your own law firm, like a law firm owner?
Right. Okay, sure. So I've practiced in practice actually for about 25 years now. And so initially I graduated law school in Los Angeles, California. I actually was interested in sports, agency law. I wanted to represent athletes. So that was really my main goal when I went to law school. That was the area that I wanted to pursue. That's an area that a lot of guys who like sports, or girls that, want, that's like the dream job. It's so, glamorous and all that. At least that's what it seems from the outside. But in any event, that was, that journey didn't really lead to any, I had some internships. I interned for a football team, the Raiders, when they were in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's cool.
In the 90s. And when I got out of law school, I wound up moving back to where I grew up in New York. And so I took the New York bar and kind of, didn't have any contacts. I wanted to get into the DA's office because I liked criminal law. I thought that was interesting, the study of the mind, because you have to prove intent, as opposed to, like, let's say in civil law, you just prove the act, somebody slipped and fell, but here you have to prove the intent. And, so I always found it interesting, but also didn't come to fruition. I wound up, getting the first job that was available. I had to start paying off my student loans and all that. So, and I kind of got into like litigation. I did a lot of litigation work for firms. I was out on Long Island and, for smaller firms. And then I went up to, then I transferred, got a job, I should say, in New York City. Actually, they had a sports department, and I was hoping to get myself in that area, but I worked in insurance defense. So I did that for a number of years. And then they opened up a office in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I moved out there, took the bar there. So I moved around a little bit, got to see the country, got to practice law in different areas. And then when I wound up in Florida, I would say about 17 years ago, I initially was interviewing for work, and, I was kind of feeling like, my marketability was in insurance defense, because that's what I was doing for a number of years before. So I decided to give it a try. I'm bilingual. I actually was born in Odessa, Ukraine. At the time, it was the former Soviet Union. We left when I was in the 70s, when I was 6 years old, but I still had the language skills, because that's what we spoke at home growing up. So, there was a fairly significant Russian speaking community in South Florida. So I
And there
thought I
still
would
is.
and now it's even grown, exactly. And so I decided to try going on my own, without having any experience, how to be a business person, how to the administrative side of it. My job was to bill my
Yeah.
cases, go to depositions, go to court hearings, prepare motions, be an attorney. All of a sudden, that was just a very small fraction of the job. It was cultivating work, business, trying to get people interested in what the service that you offer. And I basically was working for myself and basically taking clients that were coming through the door, regardless of whether it was landlord tenant or traffic ticket or whatever. And I'll tell you, I guess it exposed me to a lot of areas, but it certainly, looking back, I wouldn't do it again. I learn. You learn from your mistakes. You
Yes.
learn from mistakes, especially when they're your own. And I'll tell you, if I could give suggestion to anybody, I don't think it's pertaining specifically to the law practice, just business in general. My advice, and I know you and I briefly spoke before the taping, is you pick a niche. I think you pick
Yes.
a niche, you excel in it. You excel in it. You're the go-to for that specific area. They know that, hey, you go to Claudia for tax. And I think people look at you differently. They know that's your specialty. You're not a jack of all trades, master of none, so to speak. Because I always prided myself in giving competent representation.
Yes. Mhm.
uh, but it takes a lot of stress to, catch up to speed on a case where your opposing counsel could be doing, solely that area. And so they do this on a daily basis, and you're trying to, basically go into a boxing match with one hand behind your back. So, that was an experience. It was stressful.
Well,
And
I
you
also
take
think
your
it helps to scale. That's the only way you can scale. If you like
Yeah,
have
and
just one area.
you got to have confidence that you shouldn't be taking anything and anyone. And I'll tell you, a lot of clients, listen, not every attorney is for the client, not every client's for the attorney. And I realize that as well. You can't help everybody. You can only help this select few that that it's a right combination between the legal service you offer and what they desire to attain.
Yeah, no, I love, and I hope our listeners are getting all those great nuggets of knowledge right there. Like, one, I agree with you 100%. You need to niche. You need to, like I said, I think that just helps you scale. When you keep things simple, you can just grow, and then you have more, I think, mental space. That's what I call it. I like to keep things simple. It's like more mental space to just create more. And then two, I mean, not every client is for you. Just like not every lawyer or not every business or not every business for I guess you can put architect, doctor, whatever you want to put in there, but not every
Sure.
client is for you. I one time learned to that you should have, like, you should know what your A clients and your F clients are. So because not everybody, like I said, is for you, and that's okay. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. So so you in practice. So have you been on your own all the 17 years since you came down to
Yes.
South Florida?
Yes, I have. Yes.
And
Yes, I
I
initially started. I'm sorry. Yeah, I initially
oh,
started in
okay.
Boca Raton. That's where I was living, and that's where I opened up my office. And then, actually, because of that ability to speak Russian to some degree, I'm certainly not, a professor in Russian, but I could at least converse in Russian. I saw a big majority of my Russian-speaking clientele was coming from the Hollywood, Sunny Isles, Hollandale area.
Yes.
So that's where I wound up, getting, having to open transfer my office there, relocate, I should say, to Aventura, where I still am to this day. Since March of 2008, I've been at the same office in Aventura. So yeah, it's and it's a pretty good location for me because it's North Dade, and you're right below, just south of Broward. So you have access to the Broward courts as
Mm-hmm.
well as the Miami courts, and even the Palm Beach courts are not that far.
Yeah. And yeah, and like we were talking before this, I mean, I think it always helps when if you are able to speak your client's native language. Like I'm fluent in Spanish. I was born in Panama, and I have clients that they are fluent in English, but when we're together or when we're emailing each other, it is in Spanish. Even though we can have the conversation in English, you always revert back to your native. And you say it's the same for you. So I think
Yeah,
that
it's
always,
like a comfort zone. Absolutely.
yeah.
I think some people feel it as a connection, that you have similar background.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm sure with all those years of experience, you must have a cool story to tell us about your everyday life in the legal trenches, so to speak.
Well, every day is interesting. I'll tell you. I can't you know, I can't decipher. I get all kinds of uh, calls from people that are looking for legal help, or some I'm not sure if they need legal help. But I mean, honestly, I try to not take myself too seriously, and a lot of these events or instances are very humorous. It's what when I meet with a client, I know they come for me. Usually they're in distress, right? They have
Correct.
a problem, a legal issue. So I try to let them know that I understand, I empathize, I sympathize with them, I understand where they're coming from. And again, I think the main thing is trying to attain a goal. Find out from the client what they want to attain, and see if you could attain. Because some of them
Mhm.
it's not something you could meet, by evaluating the case. And I think that's what experience gives you, is the ability to evaluate a case and say, listen, this is where I see this resolving at. And if it's not what the client wants, then maybe the client should go somewhere else. Just like when you go to a doctor, you don't like the doctor's opinion. Well, you're not stuck with it. You can go to another doctor to get another doctor's opinion. So, same thing here. I always encourage my clients to, because I want them to be comfortable that they made the right choice. Because we're offering a service, and whether it's a service or purchasing a car, you want to test drive it. You want to make sure it's the right one for you.
And talk about that, like when you say that you want to know what their end goal is, do you? But what if like that they're never going to get to that end goal? Do you advise them that you try to advise them that that will not be the end goal, or do you just? I mean, what's the best way, I guess, that you can recommend? Because sometimes that the client may want this result, but because of experience and maybe sometimes the law, that result is not attainable. So and I think
Right.
that can
So
also be in other areas. So how do you get to that?
yeah, so I'll give you an example. You asked me about, just yesterday, I had someone come in, and they're trying to get back the vehicles that were repossessed from them while they were going through a criminal case. And they had three expensive vehicles: a Bentley, a Mercedes, and a Range Rover repossessed
Mm.
during the case. And then these by the government. And then these vehicles eventually wound up back in the dealerships where they came from, where
Okay.
the client purchased them. Well, you know, or I should say, not purchased them, but two of them were leases. I guess that's really the main part of the story. And and the client's argument was, I made most of the payments when these vehicles were repossessed. I only had minimum amount of payments left.
Mhm.
And but you have to be realistic. I mean, first of all, this was a few years back. Did they default on them? What did the contract say? And even if you made all the payments up until the very last one, if it's a lease, you don't really have a right to the vehicle after the lease expires, unless you work out a buyout of the with
Mhm.
the dealership. So I just told them, like, look, I reflected on my experience, because that's really all I can do. I mean, I'm not always right, and I admit that. And I tell them that from my experience, I don't see myself being able to realistically attain their goal of obtaining vehicles. Two of them were leases. The purchase one, I said, well, we have to look at the agreement. We have to see how many payments were made, if there was any equity in the vehicle when it was repossessed from you. But presumably in a lease, there is no equity in the vehicle.
Yeah.
And let's face it, I said, those vehicles are probably no longer sitting in the dealership lots. They've probably been sold or leased or whatever. So at best, you can get a compensation. So I tell them how I analyze it, not necessarily how the judge is going to analyze it if it goes in front of the court. But but again, I just say it's easier for me to do it now than it was 10 or 15 years ago, because I've been down this road, before,
Yes.
so I can reflect back on my experience. And again, I tell them, sometimes I'll just say, like, look, I find out what they want, and I say, that's not something I can do for you. Realistically, I said, I don't see it going that way in court. I explained to them the rationale why I look at it that way, how I don't see the judge or the jury going that way. And either they say, okay, either they bring down their expectations, or you know what, maybe they seek someone else, and hopefully that someone else will do the right thing and be honest with them. But again, we're not here to save the world. We're only here to save as many people we come into contact with, and not everybody we come into contact with we can help. And I think that's one of the things of being an attorney. You have to know your limitations and try to work within them.
Well, I think that advice I will apply to anybody. I mean, just sometimes it's just freeing to say no. I don't know why I can't, or that's not something I'll be able to do.
Yes. I'll be honest with you. Some of the, I can tell you this. It's very important to know what case. I tell people this often, at least lately. It's very important to know what cases to take. But in my opinion, it's even more important to know what cases not to take, because those could be a nightmare. They could be a nightmare just for you and the client, and again, it doesn't necessarily apply just to the law. I mean, in anywhere, whenever you're dealing with a consumer, and the consumer has a certain expectation, they want to buy an economical vehicle, but they wanted to do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. Like, there's certain things that just don't gel, and you have to explain to them that, or they have a budget and they can't spend for the high performance engine, so that car is not going to go as fast as they hope it does. But again, I know I'm just using simple examples, but I'm just saying, like you said, it's a lot of it. You just have to simplify. It's really not that complicated. You know what you can do, and you know what you can't do. And you have to be honest with whoever comes to meet with you, and consider your service, whether it would be the right fit for them. I mean, I think really the best thing to do, because certainly I'd want that in return, is just people to be upfront with me. Just today, for example, someone called me that their spouse was arrested for and charged with a first-degree felony, and I asked me how much that would typically run. I said, I can't tell you that, because I need to read the police report. Listen, it's a first-degree felony off the bat. It's a charge. Doesn't mean it's going to stick. I mean, they could, a week later, the state attorney can reduce it to a third-degree felony. I mean, the arrest just happened within a week. So we don't know. It wouldn't be fair for me. I said, we need to be fair to both of us. I can't charge you for first-degree felony because we don't know if it will be, but nor can I charge you for a misdemeanor, because I don't know if it'll be reduced to a misdemeanor. So let me evaluate the case. Let me look, because I didn't know anything about it. I said, let me look at the police report and the indictment documents or whatever is available, and we'll go from there.
Okay. And do you handle, I mean, all kind of, because I know criminal defense by itself has like different specialties. Do you handle, is there a certain specialty that you do, or do you handle just about all criminal defense?
Well, a lot of my cases are vehicle related, like DUI, driving without a license. I've lately been handling, I don't know if this is a comment on society, but I've been handling a lot of domestic violence cases on both sides, representing sometimes the accused, the one that's been charged, and sometimes the victim as well.
Okay.
Uh, and I mean, I don't haven't had lately any criminal cases in federal court. So I would steer away from that because I think it's a special animal. You have to know the decor,
Yes.
the quorum of the court, and and it's always good to know the prosecutors, and it's always like, they talk about that home field advantage. It is important to walk into court and have familiar faces look at you and say hi. I mean, you may not do any better, but the chances are you're not going to do any worse. You know what I mean? Than
Yes.
someone who's not familiar. So, unfortunately, that's the way our world is. I mean, it's not always what you know, right? Sometimes it's who you know, and it helps to
Yeah.
negotiate with somebody that you've done it before with, for a plea agreement. It's important to have like that trust, where, hey, remember we had that case last year and we were able to resolve it, so that's all part of the experience, right, Claudia?
No,
That's
no, and
why,
I think no.
it's people that have experience are sought out in our profession or any other profession.
it's a niche, and I think when you do a specialty, you always end up, you may run into the same revenue agent that you talk to, or when I go to tax court, is the attorneys, the IRS attorneys are per region, and you end up seeing the same ones all the time.
Important, right?
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of that stress off of you because you know what you're getting yourself into, and I think the client feels better about it because the client feeds off the energy of the attorney. If the attorney walks in and doesn't know what courtroom to walk into, I think the client's going to get a little nervous. But when the attorney walks in and says hello to the bailiff and the judge says good morning, Miss Martinez or whatever, the client's like, okay, I got a veteran here. I got someone that knows what they're doing.
And I always like to, I think a lot, even though we've been talking just about lawyers and law firms, I think a lot, like I said, translates to any other business for our listeners, and that it always helps you to know also your community, because usually any community, any professional community ends up being small. Even though we're in big cities and all that, you'll be surprised. And something that I always like to end the podcast with is, can you give us some legal tip to a business owner, knowing that our business owners that sometimes just things that something that can be practical that they can implement and they can hopefully keep out of trouble?
I mean, since I introduced myself, or I should say, I'm sorry, you introduced me, Claudia, as defense attorney. Listen, you don't have to be a criminal to have contact with the law. First of all, we all make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes could be on the side of the police. Where mistaken identity or whatever the case is, or somebody maliciously pointed the finger at you and tried to get you arrested. So my only advice is, is like, when you come in contact with the police, and I have the highest regard for the police, I truly do. I think they do a tough job, and they, they keep law and order in our society, but they're there to arrest. So if you're in contact, or someone is in contact, it's best to be careful what you say, because if for one thing, if they already made the determination to arrest you, let's say if they already put handcuffs on you, you're not going to talk your way out of it. Okay. I mean, very unlikely. Very unlikely. So unless you're completely aware of what you're saying and that you're not saying, because anything you say, I mean, like the Miranda warning, anything you say can and will be used against you. It is. And some people, they're not criminal. I have clients like that, but they make a mistake, and that mistake rises to a criminal activity, and they feel horrible about it. And the first thing they want to do is apologize and say, yeah, I did it, because they're like, okay, I'm going to be upfront with them, and and maybe they'll show leniency on me. Well, that is true, but not with the police. That's later for court. But the police, they're not being, an arrest is an arrest. That's what their job. They either arrest you or they don't. And regardless of what they charge you with, doesn't mean the state attorney is going to follow that. They may up the charge, or they may reduce the charge. So the bottom line is that, if somebody's in that predicament, it's best to be very cautious to say anything. You have a right to an attorney. There's a reason that our Constitution provides for that. It's because they know that people can get coerced into saying things. Or, like I said, you could say 55 things and 40 of them are in your favor, but it won't be in the police report. It'll be the 15 things you said that wasn't in your favor. So, and again, it's not because they're police are being, malicious or in bad faith. They're just there to do their job. Their job is to find probable cause for the arrest. So again, that would be my advice. If someone ever gets into that situation, just to be very cautious as to what you say. And the people that think they can talk themselves out of it are usually the people that get into worse trouble, because they make it even worse.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I agree. It's the IRS, the same thing.
Right.
The IRS has actually a mission statement that they need to collect as much money in the least amount of time. It is a collection agency, and they're super nice. All the agents, when you call the IRS, they're nice, but their mission statement is collect as much in the least amount of time. So they're not going to tell you what's to your benefit. So
absolutely.
Yes, sometimes silence is golden.
Yes, exactly. It's not what you say, it's what you don't say, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So if somebody, and when we were talking before the recording started, I say I had clients that is not them that they actually have, but I, without fail, once in a blue moon, I get a client that says, "Oh, my nephew got into this, and I need a criminal lawyer," or this, or my friend, somebody. And so there may be, even if it's just they know themselves, but even if our listener doesn't make a mistake, they may have somebody that made a mistake and they may need of your help. How can they get in contact with you if somebody needs to talk to you?
Well, thank you for that. Yes, they could reach me. I have my, I have my own website. That nowadays it's important. People want to go on Google and see if this person or this company is legit. So it's VeingerLaw.com. V as in Victor, E-I, N as in Nancy, G as in George, ERLAW.com. VeingerLaw.com is my website. I could also be reached, my office phone number, 305-682-0401. Again, 305-682-0401. As I mentioned previously, my office is in Aventura, Florida. And check me out on the web. Not too many people with Steven Veinger as their name. So if you Google my name, my website will probably come up on the first page. And if you think that I could be of legal service to you, feel free to contact me.
And we'll make sure to have it in the show notes. So if you look down below in the show notes, you will also be able to find the links to all the information Steven gave you. Well, Steven, once more, thank you so much for all the advice you gave us and the tips. And I hope our listeners got all those little good business nuggets for them to apply.
Thank you, Claudia. You were wonderful. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed my time with you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Ask the Tax Attorney podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. And if they're in tax trouble, they will too. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.